Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Let me join all the other speakers in congratulating IFPRI on their 40th anniversary. I'm very pleased to join you today and share some perspectives from the United Nations. Food security has always been, since the signing of the San Francisco Charter, one of the most heartfelt priorities for the UN, and in particular for its development agencies, but not only. For the three pillars of the UN, for the people who fight for peace and security, the people who work on development, and the people who defend and advocate for human rights, food security is simply indispensable. And we can be the first generation to end poverty and hunger, just like we probably are the last generation with a serious chance to curb global warming. And yet, as we live in a world of great inequalities and of food inequality, short of 800 million people around the world do not have enough food to lead a healthy life. 1 in 9 people in the world live in hunger. 1 out of 6 children, roughly 100 million kids in developing countries, are underweight, and 1 in 4 of the poor world's children are stunted. At the same time, we have 1.4 billion people who are overweight, of whom 500 million are obese. 70% of the world's poor depend on natural resources for all or part of their livelihoods, and many are suffering the consequences of depletion of natural capital. Overwhelmingly, as many of the preceding speakers have said, food insecurity is a global economic, development and political problem with the greatest challenges in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. The underlying causes of food insecurity, are complex and diverse. Poverty and inequality, of course, inadequate infrastructure, conflict, climate change, water scarcity, land and environmental degradation, among others. To address these underlying causes of food insecurity and to inspire actions towards a world free from hunger within a generation, the UN Secretary General launched the Zero Hunger Challenge in June 2012 during the Rio+20 World Conference on Sustainable Development. At the same time, the world leaders, just in September in New York, launched the new 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, which emphasize a global determination to end hunger, achieve food security and all forms of malnutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture as stipulated in SDG 2. Achieving food security and ending hunger can only happen when emerging food policy issues are able to address several interconnected factors together. Nothing is simple, and this is particularly complex a problem. Such factors include growth, livelihoods and employment, access to basic infrastructure and services, nutrition, health, education, and greater equality. When addressing these multiple dimensions together, interventions that emphasize the sustainable use of biodiversity and ecosystems will be critical. In my organization, the Development Program of the United Nations, we believe that measures to combat land degradation, reduce food and post-harvest losses, and promote sustainable consumption patterns are critical to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The agriculture sector remains critical for inclusive and sustainable growth. It represents a significant share of the economies of developing countries, as in the previous panel, Minister Abdul Manan clearly illustrated in the case of his native Bangladesh. Achieving food security and ending hunger will require a capacity for integrated decision-making, whole-of-government approaches, I'd even say whole-of-society approaches, of course, public-private partnerships, and in order to address inefficiencies and unsustainable practices in the agriculture sector and build a new global food system. It would also require significant capacity building, technical assistance, generous knowledge transfer, finance, and accountability. All must therefore be on board. Governments, farmers' organizations, civil society activists, think tanks, research institutes, social movements, business groups, development and commercial bankers, the UN system, and all of you infused with the determination that zero hunger can actually be achieved in our lifetime. We will, for ourselves, focus on 3 priorities. First, facilitating access to technology and land rights for smallholder farmers, in particular women, to meet the food needs of the poor and marginalized communities. 2, supporting an inclusive and sustainable agriculture value chain that generates the jobs and livelihoods that are needed and empowers smallholders to increase productivity and access to markets. And 3, utilizing social protection as a powerful tool to tackle hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition, and to empower people by building their assets and protecting them against shocks. Shocks, ladies and gentlemen, are the new normal. Volatility seems to be no news anymore. But we can't settle for a world of plenty with plenty of hungry people. Agenda 2030 is an agenda of dignity and justice for people and the planet, and food security is an absolutely indispensable pillar of that agenda. Thank you very much.